Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you, coming at you with an updated tier list now that the latest selection pack is out, which of course features Branded and Enacraft among other cards. We're going to take a look at 20 of the most popular and or powerful decks and rank them accordingly here on the tier list. Real quick before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to our Patreon subscribers as well as our YouTube members. If you're looking for exclusive content that doesn't get uploaded here to YouTube, replays I don't have time to get to, we look at new cards as well as meta-analysis over on patreon.com/hexlex. And then if you want to see content like this early, then you should definitely join as a member down below next to the subscribe button. Either way, you get your name featured at the end credits of every video. So now that I've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get right on into it. Like I said, we've got 20 of the most popular and or powerful archetypes represented here. There are, of course, many other decks that are very viable in this meta that aren't featured here. But of course, we only have so much time, so we're just going to go over these 20. Starting off in no particular order, we have Kashtira, which despite Fenrir being unlimited, I think has remained a pretty firmly rogue deck, as I predicted it would be. It was pretty easy to see, right? The Kashtira end board, even at the time of release of Arise Heart, was already kind of notable for not having any negates or protection on it, making it really, really easy to break apart. And the archetype has lost a lot of consistency between the limits of Unicorn and the field spell Ratesoth, that's what it's called. So while Fenrir Unlimited did help, I don't think it's made Kashtira a meta deck. You know, I honestly think that Unicorn and Ratesoth being unlimited still would, Kashtira would have a hard time pushing into tier 3 and staying there consistently. It's still a solid deck, but definitely pretty firmly in Rogue. And for what it's worth, Rogue decks are not necessarily just bad. I think that any Rogue deck, and even more than that are featured here, are definitely capable of topping tournaments or hitting Master 1. It just takes a more dedicated pilot. Okay, for Blue Eyes, I'm going to continue to put Blue Eyes in tier 3, although it is continuing to slide down the tier rankings. I fear that even with the overframe cards, Blue Eyes really got the short end of the stick. They really aren't that great for the archetype, and I think even after those come out, we are going to continue to see Blue Eyes have a bit of a decline as it dips further and further into Rogue status. I don't think it's quite there yet. I think it's still a pretty solid deck, but it's still on the same fairly linear gameplay that it's been on since the level 12 Ultimate Spirit Dragon, I think it's called, in that wave of support with Wishes and True Light and all that stuff was released. Still the same strategy, which is still decent, but really only decent. Okay, Enacraft. This is actually going to be one of the new archetypes that was featured in the latest selection pack. And this one, I think, really does kind of straddle that line between tier 3 and Rogue. If you wanted to put Enacraft at the bottom of tier 3, I would not fault you at all for that. I'm going to put it in Rogue, though, because I've actually played against the deck a couple of times now on Ranked Ladder, and it is quite good, don't get me wrong. However, I think at the end of the day, Enacraft really is just very, like, single purpose, right? Just flipping stuff down, burning, slowly grinding out. If you're facing Enacraft for the first time, it's a lot to take in because it plays very differently from a lot of other decks. But once you've played against it a couple of times, you kind of know what Enacraft is about. You really do get a much better sense of not only like how to stop them, but also how good of a hand your opponent has, how much they're snowballing. To be fair, that's true of any archetype you play against, but Enacraft might have that a little bit of a curve, because like I said, it plays very differently from a lot of other decks. It's really mostly just a matter of paying attention to which flip effect monsters your opponents are adding, when their conditions are, you know, triggered to flip them face up, and if they have a flip effect to associate. It's a lot of moving parts, but it's not impossible to beat by any means. RB, I think, does continue to be a very solid Rogue deck in this meta. I'm going to put it just below Enacraft. I think they're roughly the same power level. They've both had some pretty decent, you know, showcasings in paper tournaments. Enacraft, though, in particular, has, I think, topped a very recent YCS. And more than that, I think it does have a little bit more of a punch than RB. They're two very, very different decks, though. And I think they are fairly close to the same power level. All right, Orcust continues to be one of the higher win rate decks, still at roughly 54%, as it has been for the last couple of seasons. So I'm going to continue to put it in tier 2, as I've been putting it there for the last couple of seasons. Probably continues to be Master Duel's most slept on deck. It's not like breaking the meta by any means, but for how few people are on it, having that high of a win rate is fairly impressive. So, excuse me. Yeah, we'll continue to put Orcus in tier 2. All right, Lunalight does actually get a little bit of a buff after the latest wave of unbannings with Broad Bowl. And I think that it is going to get a decent bit of a boost from that. Not enough to keep it out of tier 2, but it will definitely help keeping the deck meta relevant. It's basically just a strict upgrade to Tiger King, right? Because not only are you able to search for stuff that Tenki can't, like Lunalight Wolf, but also, of course, you get to throw the Trident on top of the Broad Bowl, if you've got room for that in your extra deck, giving you yet another layer of disruption to that end board, which is already, of course, really, really solid. Yeah, I think this is a pretty decent spot for Lunalight. I'll leave it here in tier 2 for now. Okay, Elf Note. Elf Note, Elf Note, Elf Note. I was actually thinking a lot about this because part of me wants to actually put this at the top of tier 2, but I think I'll leave it in tier 1 for now. It'll probably end up being more towards the bottom though. I don't know. See, the thing about Elf Note is that right now, without the follow-up Power Patron support and June Pride, it's actually a better, well, I don't know about better, but it's about as good of an engine as it is a deck. You'll see Elf Note as an engine blended in with a lot of other kinds of archetypes right now, which I think is really, really cool. So it's kind of hard to pin down like one Elf Note variant that would be tier 1. For me, why I'm considering it tier 1 is more of just like the culmination of decks that are using it and the total impact that that's having on the meta. If I'm just considering like the, you know, standard Elf Note Fiendsmith, that's where I'm more like this might just be the top of tier 2. But, I don't know. I'm back and forth. I think I'll actually leave it here for now. Odeon. I've been putting Odeon in tier 2. I don't think it's necessarily gotten that much weaker, but I do think other decks are getting stronger. I'll continue to leave it in tier 2, though. I think that's a decent spot. Okay, Sky Striker. I don't know if this is going to be a hot take or not, but I'm putting Sky Striker in tier 1. It's not going to be the best deck in the meta, but I do think that with the Fallen and the Virtuous having recently come out, that is actually a pretty decent boost of support, having a really, really powerful board-breaking quick play spell that's also really useful in a grind game over the course of multiple turns. Yeah, I also think that we're going to see Sky Striker continue to rise in power level, not with any particular Sky Striker support coming out, but with more powerful quick play spells. Whenever we get Forbidden Crown, that's going to be yet another really powerful board-breaking spell that Sky Striker is able to make use of. Granted, every deck can make use of it, like the Fallen and the Virtuous, but certain decks definitely benefit from it more than others, and I would say that Sky Striker is definitely up there. And of course, there's also the fact to consider it still has a great Cool Tune matchup, which is still very meta relevant. Being able to play such a grind game, it can potentially outpace Branded's grind game. That one, I haven't played that matchup on either end very often, so I don't know who's actually favored there off the top of my head, but I think Sky Striker remains very well poised going into this meta. If you look at OCG meta reports too, Sky Striker is still doing very well over there. I think any meta where Cool Tune is doing really well, Sky Striker is going to do really well. But even independent of that, I think that these quick play spells are really, really good for the deck. So that's why I'm putting it in tier 1. Again, that might be a hot take, but I've been seeing it perform so well on both ranked ladder, rating duels, and in tournaments lately. So yeah, we're going to put it up there. Radiant Typhoon. I'm a little tempted to put this in tier 1, but I'm going to put it in tier 2. I think it's about on par with Elf Note. Like, I'm a little tempted to do this instead, but I think I might leave it like this for now. So Radiant Typhoon also super benefits from the Fallen and the Virtuous because even more so than Sky Striker, it cares specifically about quick play spell cards. Of course, a lot of their effects are triggered by quick play spell cards. Vision, obviously you can discard a quick play spell card. It's a no-brainer why Fallen and the Virtuous really boosts Radiant Typhoon about as much as it did Sky Striker, making it a very powerful, I guess you could call it sort of a mid-rangey option if you want to use that word to describe Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. I've always thought that was a little bit weird of a descriptor, but anyway. Yeah, no, so like it does play the grind game very well, but it's also got a lot of ability to OTK. I think at the end of the day, Radiant Typhoon is very well poised in the current meta, and if it's not bordering on tier 1, it's definitely like towards the top of tier 2, much like Elf Note, even though they're very different decks. That's why I want them kind of like right next to each other, and well, I'm still going a little bit back and forth like this. Okay, next up we have Draco Tail. Draco Tail, Draco Tail, Draco Tail. Where do I want to put you? Because Draco Tail does benefit from the new branded support, but I haven't run into Draco Tail since the new branded support came out. So it is a little bit difficult for me to actually place it. This is yet another one where it's like, this is like tier 2 bordering on tier 1. I do kind of want to put it a little bit lower than these other decks, because I think this is more leaning towards tier 2 than like Elf Note or Radiant Typhoon. I think that's fine for now. Yeah, I think that's fine for now. Tier 2 is actually going to be pretty stuffed full on this tier list, because I definitely want to put Magnet Warrior here as well. I would put it roughly on par with like Orchest. Where I've particularly been noticing Magnet Warrior doing well is tournaments, like Challenger Cups. You always see Magnet Warrior winning, not just topping, but winning the European Challenger Cups. So it's definitely a deck that's got a fair amount of punch to it. And you know, the more I'm looking at these tier 2 decks, the more I think I actually do want to put Odeon in tier 3. It's definitely a solid deck, but I don't know, compared to the power level of all these other archetypes here, I really think it is just a little bit of a step down. I would be a little tempted to put Lunalight here as well, but again, Lunalight did get boosted by Zodiac pretty recently. I don't have Zodiac represented here, by the way, because I think, I don't know, I don't think it's going to be that popular, and I don't think it's going to be that powerful either. Plus, also, Zodiac is much more of an engine than it is its own archetype. Like, pure Zodiac, I think, would definitely be Rogue around the level of Kashira for sure, but it's not on here, so that's all I really have to say about it for now. Anyway. Where are we next? Yummy. Yeah, I'm not really, in this one, I'm not really splitting all the different archetypes. I'm just going to kind of talk about, like, Yummy and its variants in general. I think are, like, roughly tier 3 power level, maybe a little bit below Odeon. I really like Yummy, so, like, I want to put it, like, up here, but if I'm being a little bit more objective about it, I think Yummy's probably down here. Like, I've been having a lot of success with Snake Eye Yummy in this meta, but that doesn't mean it's, like, a tier 1 deck or anything. Again, any deck on this tier list, and many more that aren't on it, are very capable of topping tournaments and or hitting Master 1. It just depends on how, with the lower tier stuff, dedicated the pilot is, as mentioned, but yeah, haven't really seen Sulfur Cord Yummy around at all since Orange Herald got limited, which makes sense. Mitsu Yummy has been on a slow but steady decline ever since Cupsy Yummy got limited, which also makes sense. Again, I've been having success with Snake Eye Yummy, but it's by no means a popular deck. And the most amount of Yummy I've actually been seeing lately is Fiendsmith Yummy, which I haven't played in a hot minute, and I actually might come back to at some point. That I have been seeing topping tournaments occasionally, but yeah, for the most part, I think Yummy really is feeling the impact of not just the limits, but also it's got a pretty poor Cool Tune matchup, which does remain one of the more meta-relevant decks. Alright, Exosister, I think is going to end up joining these other decks down here in tier 3. Maybe a little bit below Blue Eyes even. I was a little tempted to put Exosister and Rogue, but I think that it's just a little bit more of a punch, I think, than stuff like Enacraft and RB. I might be overvaluing this, honestly. You know what? I thought about it some more, and I think I am actually going to put Exosister like at the top of Rogue. I think it is, at the end of the day, pretty comparable to these two. Maybe even more like this. I think that actually looks better. Yeah. It's pretty comparable, I think, overall in terms of power level to Enacraft and RB. I still have this, like, I guess you would call it a legacy rose-tinted glasses, looking at it, just thinking back to tier limits format, which I think is why I initially dragged it to tier 3. But, like, Carmel and the Betrayal were really good boosts, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's quite enough to make EXO a tiered deck. Okay, Cool Tune, I actually do think still remains the best deck in the format. There are other decks that are giving it a run for its money, we'll talk about here in just a minute, but Cool Tune remains very, very powerful. The level changing effects still are honestly kind of meta warping. One of the reasons why Yummy doesn't perform too well, and I think Elfnet would be in a much better position if it weren't in a meta where Cool Tune was around as well. Yeah, I think that Cool Tune still just has pretty much everything that a deck wants, right? It's got very consistent combo lines, it's got a lot of push, it's got a lot of layered disruption, it's got turn 0 options. I think among the tier 1 decks, it is still probably just going to be the best one right now. I think overall the meta is in a pretty balanced place in terms of power level. Like, I don't think something like Magnet Warrior is really that much worse than Cool Tune at all. Like, even down here towards the end of tier 2 compared to the best decks of the format. But, you know, tier 1 decks do have that noticeable up on tier 2 decks, and I think Cool Tune definitely fits that bill. Canine VS, I think, does also still remain a tier 1 deck. You could debatably put it even a little bit lower than Sky Striker, though, but I'm not even super sure if Sky Striker should be up here, so I'll leave it like that. Yeah, Canine VS does still have some ingenuity happening, like the inclusion of Elf Note, as we reviewed on the channel relatively recently, has been getting a little bit more popular and seeing more play, but even the more standard builds, I think, are still just doing very, very well. Okay, Mitsurugi, there's so many different ways to play it between Ryzeal and Zodiac, and I've seen people even messing around with Fallen Mitsurugi, you know, using a little bit of a branded engine, because obviously being a ritual archetype, Mitsurugi doesn't really care if you get locked out of, you know, some extra deck stuff. But, I think I have to put it somewhere in the neighborhood of like Radiant Typhoon and Dracotale, all the different Mitsurugi variants. Ryzeal Mitsu I've been hugely up on, you know, pretty much since I became aware of the deck, and I do think it is still really, really strong, but I just haven't been seeing it perform quite as well lately. That honestly though might be more of a popularity thing than a power level thing, the lack of representation of Ryzeal Mitsurugi. It does still end up being, I think, one of the better decks of the format, but like I said, I mean, the line between tier 1 and 2 is so thin right now in this meta that that's why I'm kind of having a hard time placing a lot of these cards. Okay, Branded, I think, is absolutely a tier 1 deck. I think it's like, you can make an argument for like between this and Cool Tune, which is the best. I think they're pretty much like about equal, but I do think Cool Tune has a slight edge. At least for nothing else, if for being more popular, because Branded is one of those decks that really does ask you to be a master of it in order to consistently get it to tournament success. I mean, duh, that's true of any deck, right? But Branded has a much steeper learning curve than something like Cool Tune, which I think is going to make Cool Tune a more popular choice when it comes to tournaments. And as a result, I think you might see Cool Tune topping a little bit more. That said, when you see Branded players topping, it's probably going to be consistently the same people, because like I said, those who dedicate the time to mastering a deck as complex and layered as Branded are really going to very consistently reap the benefits of it. Branded is honestly, even though I'm not very good at it and I don't play it super often, I do think it is almost a model example of what you would like to see in a tier 1 Yu-Gi-Oh deck. That is to say, the more skill you can dedicate to it, or show with it rather, through the time you've dedicated to it, the better it will perform, which is, you know, ideally what you would want out of any game, right? The more skillful player to win. Very, very, very good deck, though. The new support will continue to make it relevant, I think, for many, many months to come. Definitely don't sleep on Branded. Even right now in the OCG, it's still like a tier 1 bordering on, you know, with Fallen of, or not Fallen, with Ritual of Light and Darkness, it is kind of going down a little bit into tier 2, but even that deck plays a Branded engine using Fallen of the White Dragon, so is it really even going down in play rate or, you know, win rate? Probably not. Either way, definitely hang on to those Branded cards for quite some time. It's a very, very good deck and will continue to be so for quite some time. Okay, Hekahan's Illusion decks, I think I will put this in tier 3, because I do think this is a little bit of a step up between these rogue decks down here, but not that much. I think this is definitely going to continue to slide down into rogue, probably by the next tier list, but Hekahan's illusion decks are still pretty decently popular, and I think they're pretty solid. And finally, Malice, an archetype I haven't seen around in a little bit, but it's still there. I mean, the Radiant Typhoon variant I think is still probably the best way to play it, or at least the one that gives you the most amount of starters. And that kind of strategy, I think, is probably tier 3, maybe a little bit above Yummy. Alright, so that's where I've got the current tier list, and you know, looking at it, I'm actually pretty pleased with this. Again, you could make an argument for Sky Striker actually being tier 2, Elfno and or Radiant Typhoon actually being tier 1. Again, this line between tier 1 and 2 is very thin, and I think that we're in a pretty decently balanced meta as far as like having a lot of variety and nothing being too overwhelming. Cool Tune, again, you could kind of make that argument, but overall I'm pretty pleased with where things are right now. We'll see what happens whenever we get something like Phydraulis Harmonia, but that's to worry about another time. Anyway, thank you as always for watching. Super appreciate the support, whether you watched all the way through or even if you just skipped to the end to see where I put everything. I just really appreciate that you cared enough to check it out. So thank you so very much. Let's go ahead and move on now to our outro so that we can thank those YouTube members and Patreon subscribers. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.